for Lenovo, even though we build products, it was in the context of physical products made of stuff, right? So information products actually did not make sense to the organization at all, right? So you guys are luckier, right? It took me a long time. They were like, what do you mean? Like, you want IT to be a product?
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today features a panel from our Metis Strategy Summit held on October 29th. The topic was Project to Product's Next Frontier, and the panelists who joined us were Art Hu, the Global Chief Information Officer and SSG Chief Delivery and Technology Officer of Lenovo, Dak Liyanearachchi, the Chief Data and Technology Officer of NRG Energy, and Mike Anderson, the Chief Digital and Information Officer of Netskope. The session was moderated by Metis Strategy Partner and Central Office Lead Mike Bertha. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
All right. So at the surface, if you look at organizations that have shifted from project to product, you'll notice a couple of things. Instead of orienting teams around applications and skill sets, they'll orient around business capabilities. Instead of orienting the way they work around a traditional plan, build, run model with separate teams conducting each of those activities, they'll work cross-functionally and unify the way they work with agile ways of working. But as I said, those are things at the surface. What we know in this group is those are two elements among a much larger equation. And so we've assembled a panel of project to product enthusiasts to speak through some additional elements of that equation. So Dak, I'll start with you. Dak, you're the Chief Technology Officer at NRG Energy in Houston, $30 billion in revenue, manufacturer and distributor of electricity as well as energy services. And you've recently embarked on a project to product journey. And I'm wondering if you could kick us off by sharing why now?
Yeah, sure. So, we have product teams. So we have product teams in digital. We have a smart home business. We have tech product teams there as well. But actually, what we're looking at right now is taking that step back and looking at an enterprise level. And why now, to Mike's question? A couple of things. Firstly, I'm sure we hide ourselves as an energy company, but actually we're an M&A company. We've done about 200 to 300 divestitures or acquisitions since 2012. So we're always on this integration journey. So we're integrating, we're buying a company, we're integrating, we're divesting a company, we're moving systems out. And that takes a toll in terms of that's the mindset you're in. And then AI, data, Gen AI, and some of our big tech investments that are coming up in 26, 27, 28 says we have to change how we do things. We've got more transformation and innovation coming than we've ever had before. We've got more, the budgets that we're getting from the business is bigger than we've ever had before. And we've got to a place where we say we can't just integrate. We have to think transformatively, and we have to think enterprise. And on top of that, we have to think around the value chain. So we do everything from generation of an electron through to getting it into your home. So we've got about 6 million residential customers, and then big industrials as well. And then we have a smart home business where we have 2 million customers. As we think about the power of bringing the home energy and the smart home together to be more efficient around energy, you're starting to see two different technology groups working. They say the same thing, but they do it differently. And I think that's part of the journey that we're on, which is we've got to create some commonalities with the digital team or the product teams that we have today. And then we have to roll that out to all of our other parts of tech so that we're following the same way. And then the third thing, and the last thing I'd say on that is the business wants more input into what we do in terms of innovation and transformation. So they want to help prioritize. They want to be engaged. They want to have, whereas before it might have been traditional waterfall, they want to be constantly in understanding why we're doing things, how we're investing in those platforms. And just to give you an example, if we didn't have a product view or a platform view, We currently have about 8 billing systems. And just that in its own right, in trying to integrate that, will drive us all crazy. And so we have to think differently around our platforms and then how we transform them. So we're on that journey as we think about that transformation innovation that we have coming up in the next 4 to 5 years.
Great. So a catalyst for a lot of other changes and shifting from selling solutions or selling solutions instead of selling individual products, catalyst for all of those things. I'm going to come over to you, Art. Art, you're the Global Chief Information Officer at Lenovo, as well as the Chief Delivery and Technology Officer for the Services and Solutions Group. When we previously have spoke, you've mentioned that your shift to product was a lot about the question of what to work on next becoming less clear. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and thank you for having us. Yeah, so for Lenovo, Dak was answering the question for NRG of why now. For us, it's been a little bit more in the rearview mirror when we started to make the change. And we had, similar to what Dak was mentioning, Lenovo had come out of a period of transformation. We've been working on globalizing and moving from PCs to infrastructure, and really now into services as solutions. And so the business imperative was quite strong of, we know we need to do something different. We know as a result of things like, years of putting together billing systems and CRMs and other platforms, right? That had a very specific feel to it. And so as we shifted out of that, the question of what next was important. And it really brought together two sides of it. The business knew they wanted something different after years, because when Lenovo runs a global platform, and when you're doing something that you have to roll out to tens of thousands of users and partner ecosystems also numbering in the tens of thousands, those aren't things you do in a month. So it was, a roadmap with the next 2 years, quarter by quarter laid out. As we exited that, the business really wanted to do something different because they needed some more speed and agility. And at the same time, the IT team was catching its breath and had a what got you here won't get you there moment. Right? And so it was this perfect moment for us where we said, well, the business wants something different. The IT team had all this unchanneled energy and a little bit of nervousness of, oh, well, the company still need us. All these things that we used to do, are they still relevant for the future? And so this mindset shift of, okay, let's get out of doing large transformation M&A style projects into something that's much more around product value streams. We layered in some different things on top of that, was our way of both responding to the business need and a clear mandate that we want to interact differently. And it was a way for me to channel the energy. And frankly, it was nervous energy from the IT team of, oh, we know we should do something different. What is it? And so putting a program, right? Labeling isn't always good, but in this case, having an integrated label of, we really want to shift out of this projects. They're like, oh yeah, that's what we were doing. Now we want to be much more around products. Oh, we own something permanently that's of value and speaks the same language of the business, was just the right way to tie it together under an umbrella that really gave energy and it gave lift to the organization, right? And I think it helped focus us towards the future together with the business team.
Thanks, Art. Well, Mike Anderson, you're the Chief Information Officer at Netskope and Cybersecurity Solutions Organization. Big difference in where you are in the growth journey, just being founded in 2012. Talk about the genesis of project to product and how that came about at Netskope.
Yeah, so I've been on this journey before. I was at Schneider Electric, and we led that for North America and shifted to a product operating model. If I go back, a little 3.5 years ago when I joined Netskope, we were scaling up as an organization. We've gone over the last 3.5 years from 1,300 people to over 3,000. And when you grow the organization, it's natural for a lot of silos to form. And so one of the reasons I wanted to make that shift was really thinking about how do we bring together all of the teams, not just within, my group, but across the organization. A good example would be with our marketing organization, we created what we call Fellowship of the Funnel. So it includes people that are from our sales organization, our marketing organization, the technical organization, really focused on the funnel as a product. And how do we make sure we get the tuning done right there? The other piece is we grew, people were associating their value to the tool that they were responsible for, not the product or capabilities you said at the very beginning. And so I wanted to break that down and make people think about, for example, how do we manage the lead when the leads come in, to how do we collect cash, that buyer journey? How do we create, a product around the capabilities that live there? And so really kind of breaking those pieces down. But at the end of the day, it was really around how do we work better cross-functionally and make sure everyone that owns, a capability for the organization, regardless where they sit, can work together. And the measure we've said is if someone walked in a room and tried to figure out who reports to who, it'd be a really hard challenge to figure out. And so that's been, one of the things we look at as a success piece there. But also I wanted to make sure people didn't say, this is the tool that I own, so therefore it's the tool I'm going to use to solve every problem. And so, I remember when we started this, and we're early in the journey. We're just a few months into the transition. I sent an article to the team about T-shaped versus I-shaped people and said, we want to aspire to have T-shaped people in the organization that have multifaceted skills. You've got deep specialization in one area, and had a lot of people come forward and really talk about, that was an ambition they had to learn other tools and technologies. And so we're in the middle of that people transformation as well. So it's a way to kind of scale up our organization is why it made sense now.
Gotcha. Great cross-section of different reasons, whether it be having a repeatable method for acquired companies through M&A, creating a catalyst for change for larger transformation efforts, becoming more proactive and breaking down silos and building more cross-functional skills. So shifting to, okay, we've got the why figured out and like thinking about socializing it and implementing it. Dak, at $30 billion organization, thousands of people in your function, how do you start this journey and where do you start?
Yeah, it starts with nomenclature and working with the executive team. I've been on this journey with telling our CEO we're moving more to a product-focused tech organization. And the first thing he says is, isn't that what the smart home product team does with widgets in the home? And so you go, yes, that is a product team too, but it's a different product. So it starts with educating from the top. And so I think once you have the executive team engaged, understanding what it means, and actually understanding that this is good for them, and all the challenges they've had before in terms of some of the visibility that they felt like they didn't have, they have a voice in what we do and how we do it, has been great. Now, what is the biggest challenge? I would say it's probably my own organization, because it's never the right time to do it. We're all busy. We've got all of these different things to do. And as I said, we're looking at 25, 26, 27. Good. Oh my word, we have a lot to do. And you want to do this product-led approach as well. So I would say the business side is actually more engaged and willing to understand. The technology side can see it, but they feel a little hesitancy because of everything that's coming at them. And I think that's where I have to spend a lot of my time with our leadership team, working through that. Because even as you think about AI and Gen AI, I came into NRG as the Chief Data Analytics Officer, and then I had technology after that. But even though we have a technology group, we keep data separate to technology so that they can carry on and build out all the different use cases. But if we're not careful, everybody gets excited. The data team gets excited, wants to work with the business, and the business teams are going, I don't know what, am I talking to the data guys or am I talking to the tech guys that support everything we do? And without getting a little bit more coordinated, we're going to create a organized chaos. And that's why we have to spend a lot of time with our own teams, making sure that we are implementing it and having the message that consistently goes through the organization, the tech organization.
Right. Coordinated communication. And with that, speaking about business involvement, Mike, something we talked about was the role of the product owner and the concept of having a product owner in IT versus in the business and having these cross-functional fusion teams. What have you been seeing on that front?
Yeah, so one of the first things, going back to product, is being a product company, it was easy to say we're shifting to a product model because our CEO got that and our teams got that. Then I had to delineate between titles and put IT in the front of all the titles just so it didn't confuse between our product teams that are building our product and the internal IT group. But we really had to, we worked on the taxonomy. It was really around what's the role of a product manager versus the role of a product owner. And so we talked about, when you get in the product management side, it's really more that external engagement, looking at what the roadmap, the strategy is, maybe how it touches the customer more versus the product owners more, facing off to our engineering teams or the cross-functional team driving the backlog to support that strategy. And so I think the biggest piece has been getting people to shift from it's the people are always the hardest part. Getting people that have managed a team and say, okay, is your desire to own the what and the why and the strategy, or is your job, or do you want to be the person that actually does the how?
Sure.
Where is your passion? So trying to figure those areas out has probably been, the biggest change, because then people naturally, and when you shift to this model, they naturally put their value is, I'm a people manager. And so how do I shift? If I'm a product manager or product owner, I'm still leading, but I don't have to lead. I don't have to be a people manager. So separating those out has been part of the journey for us. And then I think, you talked about challenges. I think the first thing you always do is you think about the organization structure. I think it's really important to think about how you're going to operate before you ever look at the org chart. And that was the first thing we did. But then trying to figure out, okay, how do we then move these pieces together to make sense? But yeah, it's been the adoption of thinking about being the product model and how we do that. It's been easy to communicate to my peers. Right now it's just getting the people to on the journey is probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, very important to delineate org structure where you report, operating model where you work. One other thing before we go back to Art is you've talked about some unique implications for security and infrastructure to maybe at odds teams at time, and the product model being a mechanism to help kind of soothe those relations.
Yeah, so being a cybersecurity company, the CISO and his remit is broader than mine because he owns product security and internal security. And so oftentimes you find in organizations, security and infrastructure teams, network teams aren't always getting along. There's a little friction there. And so that's been a good area, especially around how we use our own products. Our Customer Zero program, it's how we bring those teams together to work and deliver the product or capability of the organization. So I would say, good example there, identity and access management. My team has owned the identity, the identity and access component. The governance component was owned by the security team. We brought that together, and we've gotten the scope not just to be internal employees, but also customer identity, partner identity, and thinking about how that hooks into our systems and products we deliver to our customers. And so it's been a forcing function to kind of bring those fusion teams together across security and infrastructure. I would say we're still on the journey, but it's saying, hey, we're all in this together, because otherwise what you end up doing is buying siloed tools. And then these are my tools and those are your tools. And, people start to hold on. We're saying, let's just figure out what the right tool is together as a team. And so that's been it's been nice to see the teams working well together. Because I said, we have to role model what we are telling our customers about. We have to remodel the same thing, which is our security teams and infrastructure teams working side by side together to deliver outcomes for the organization.
Great. And so Art, coming back to you, for any organization that has gone through this, the shift from project to product can feel like you get agile ways of working thrown at you. You get all of the different new tools that are used to facilitate it. It can feel like vocabulary overload. And people can get really detailed in the semantics. And Art, when we talked, you said, above all, having the product mindset is the most important. And we've talked before, that's not necessarily just an agile thing. So if you could talk a little bit about that mindset and how it's different from just agile.
Yeah, and let me start where Mike left off just now, actually, because I think part of it is to get the mindset in place, you have to play, because for Lenovo, even though we build products, it was in the context of physical products made of stuff, right? So information products actually did not make sense to the organization at all, right? So you guys are luckier, right? It took me a long time. They were like, what do you mean? Like, you want IT to be a product? And I think to the point of having the right mindset, because, and by the way, it's not that we've gone through the journey, right? It is one that we're still on, right? There's lots of things that I'm constantly working on fixing. But one of the things that I play with is having the right analogy. So even on security, I had the same problem, right? Which is, well, if you're working in a different way, how do you get the right mindset? And I just kept trying with my security team. And the feedback was, these guys are just blockers. They just send everyone back. Nothing's ever good enough. It's so slow. And then it wasn't even me. One of my team is like, okay, one of my other leaders figured out the right analogy. And the right analogy for the security team was, he said, okay, you are acting like a cop, right? No, I'm going to take you to security jail. You are acting like cops. You are now bodyguards, right? You will get the team wherever they need to do with the lowest risk you can, but you're going with them. You are going with them. And it was amazing because after that, right, within a quarter, the team just flipped. It wasn't the team being recalcitrant or trying to not do things. They just had the wrong mindset. And then when you introduced, oh, we're bodyguards, and now people have like pins, right? They're like kind of their logo reflects this. They're now bodyguards, and they're like, yeah, we got the business teams where they wanted to go. And that was amazing because that was just one phrase that I've been knocking my head on the wall. How do you get the security teams there? So I think the power of having something that speaks to your teams that they can relate to can really flip the mindset. A couple of other challenges that we had are also, we got hung up on terminology. And I think it is important to recognize what is your guiding light. It'll be a little bit different. I definitely had teams that got, I don't know, they felt like fifth graders coming to their parents. They're like, oh, look at me. I did a stand-up today, every day for the last 30 days. Right. But then I'm like, but okay. And then I talked to the business leader and they're like, this team is terrible. Right? And then because I'd forgotten the key question. And then I asked, I'm like, how many times have you met with the business in your stand-up? They're like, oh, we haven't seen them in 3 months. Right. So I think the terminology is important, but you have to bring your teams back to what is the overall goal and not get caught up in it. Because there is a lot of ceremony and you can put like the ceremony and some of the metrics, and those are important. But keeping in mind the business outcomes, because a lot of you know what DORA metrics are, right, for your teams around quality, change lead time, defect rate, leakages. But I think the challenge is, how do you get towards something the business recognizes? Something that's recognizably business is always important to make sure the teams don't get hung up on kind of the process. But ultimately, for me, it's the dialogue, and does the business feel that they're in the room with you, having a stake, able to co-drive and ending up at an outcome that they would be proud of, right? And I think that's where you always have to pull your teams back to. Final thing, I don't think we talk about it as much, but this goes back to, I think, a Jim Collins book. I forget which one, but there is this notion, because it is a lot of change, I think about getting the right people on the bus, right? For those of you that remember the book, and also the people that aren't so right off the bus, right? And so and I went through a period where where there were several leaders where it just wasn't right for them, right? They kind of, we figured out they needed to opt out because it wasn't what they lined up for. And that's also a signal for the organization, which is, okay, well, you can see what the future holds, right? If that's not for you, there's other things that you can do, but make no mistake, we're going to go kind of roughly in that direction. And I think that's something to think about as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Art. Mike, and kind of speaking of that engagement with the business and meeting with the customer, how do you think about success? So you've implemented the model, or you're on this continuous journey to perfect the model. How do you think about measuring success in this model? What does good look like?
So it's one of the things, talking about outcomes, I'm a big fan of OKRs. So, and I've a great book, Radical Focus 2.0. There's a woman named Christina Waike wrote the book. I'd highly recommend reading it. But she uses a 4-up model. And so every one of our teams has one OKR that they're tracking, each one of those key results being an outcome that they're trying to deliver on. So when we think about the things we're doing, a lot of times we'll talk about, like, our Customer Zero program. The outcomes we look at would be, how many times are we talking to customers about how we use our own product? So that's an outcome we're trying to measure. We measure also, we go into Salesforce and track the influence that it has on business from a revenue standpoint. On the other side, if I think about quote to cash, some of the outcomes we drive is, our objective is we want to create an amazing customer experience, be easy to do business with. And so our outcomes we track is, one of them right now is, how many manual touches do we have on orders as they flow through, and how do we reduce manual touches? How do we make it easier for our reps to do quotation? So there's less that they have to go back to our central team to get help on doing quotation. So those are some of the outcomes that cross-functional quote to cash team has. So big fan of OKRs. I think making sure you instrument them right, don't have too many. And I think if you can get one that you focus each of those product teams on, I think that can be a good, North Star to use.
Excellent. Art, going back to you real quick, this panel is project to product, but we've also spoke with you before, and you have this concept of going from project to product to experience in terms of orientation. Could you share a little bit about that?
Well, it just goes back to the point that it's an ongoing journey. So you're never done. Right. And because we've been working at it for a while, this notion about experience, I think it's also embedded. So I don't know that it's so explicit, but it was more pulling on a thread and deciding to elevate that to help remind teams, right, whether it's oriented around an OKR or it's a customer outcome, something that's recognizably business. Because I think after a while, teams also, right, even teams that do well, they need something, a little bit of activation energy to get out of what they're doing. And so for for me, talking about experience and weaving in things like, well, how do you research what the customer journey is, was a good reminder to re-elevate the outcome and the journey that we are on. Because a lot of teams then sometimes they got into more internal things about their quality and things that were one step removed from the business, right? So that was a major driver. I think the other point about thinking about experience here is with generative AI coming into the development, I think all of our teams, all of my teams certainly are kind of rediscovering, and will be for a while, what it means to build kind of intelligent apps in a more hybrid AI era, right? I think it's not just the tool chain that looks different, right? I think the engagement model looks different again. And so thinking about the journey and the experience is another way to remind them that we are in a time of change, right? And the North Star, you're more likely to take fewer wrong turns and hit fewer dead ends, right? If you're actually really thinking about how it's affecting the outcomes that you're working for.
Thanks, Art. Dak, coming back to you, several organizations that go down this just journey, another consequence of building a more enterprise mindset in parallel with the product model is establishing a transformation function of sorts. How does that play a complementary role at NRG, and how do you think about it more largely?
Yeah, I think that as we go further on this journey in terms of our transformation and innovation, part of that, and back to both of these guys, is how do you leverage the most outcome benefit from doing what you're doing? And sometimes that's hard because you've got the technology group building these capabilities, you've got the business saying, I want them, but I don't really know how I'm going to optimize how I do things. And I think that's where the transformation office, certainly for NRG, will drive that, because a good example of that is I was at our board meeting, I think it was last month, and somebody was asking, one of our board members said, yeah, I was talking to the president of the B2B business, and I asked him, what do you need more of? How can we help? And his answer was, I need more AI. And that was it. And so what did he mean by that? I don't think he really knows either. But being able to, articulate, but have a journey of how to enable that, I think is really important. And I think that's where a transformation office, where you have the technology, the data groups, and the business working together, is critical certainly for our success.
Excellent. And so one final question, this product model really hinges on the ability to develop good product owners within technology and digital, often a muscle that hasn't been trained and developed traditionally within technology. Anyone want to share advice to other CIOs looking to build good product owners within the digital and technology functions?
I mean, I can start. I think for us, one of the things we did is you probably have these people in the organization already, but they're not always in the places you think. So one of the things that we did that was powerful was we first made a declarative statement, which is that regardless of whatever your title was, regardless of whatever function or business you were in, right, that didn't matter, right? It wasn't that only previous project managers can be product, right? So we had to very clearly declare, because people started to select out. They're like, oh, right, I'm just like a technical guy or a girl. I'm not going to do this. So we had to declare this is what it is, and we encourage everyone to apply. And then we actually made a point of finding people who had successfully come from, right, kind of the previous project management organization, kind of the previous business process teams, right, as well as the previous engineering teams, right? And we were able to find successful candidates who had transitioned into being a product manager to show people, because it wasn't enough to just declare, right? We had to declare, but then we actually made a point culturally to say, yeah, and you were from engineering and you were from project, and now but it didn't matter because you had these skills that are now sitting. And it takes time, right? It's a sorting process where you figure out where people gravitate towards. But I encourage you guys to kind of lean in and find those people and, elevate them and make good stories out of them.
Yeah, and to Art's point, when I joined NRG and we're setting up the data function, we do data as a product. So the first product manager we brought on he ran one of the largest generation facilities in the USA. He was the plant manager for that organization. Now, when you looked at his face, because it was just after COVID, and we were talking about data governance, and his face was like, I have no idea why I'm here. I have no idea what they're talking about. But actually what he brought was credibility and understanding of how things get done and how things can get done better because he got that real life experience. So to Art's point, that's certainly something we look for. That business exposure is critical.
Yeah, but the only thing I would add is, when we looked at it is, one is I'm, talking to a couple of people that have been on the journey with me before about, joining the team. So because they've been there and done it with me in the past. But I think the key piece is making sure, getting outside help, but making sure you make it your own. So what are your operating principles for how you want to operate? So, I've got a company I'm working with right now that's doing, Agile Foundations training. We're doing product owner training. We're doing OKR training. So I met with a lot of companies. I found one that feels like a good fit, and we're making it our own, because I think the thing is, if you try to take what works somewhere else, or just, whatever the best practice is and try to implement that best practice, it may not work in your organization. And so that's the path we're going on. And then also highlighting people that are already doing it, but don't realize it. What you find in your organization, you have people that have gone through the training before, they're already operating the way you want. So then just reinforcing the positive behaviors and things you want them to do is also a great way. And those will be our change agents as we go through this journey.
That's great. Mike, Dak, Art, thank you so much. Appreciate it.